You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Start laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why Are You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Richard Pryor, live on the Sunset Strip, historic comedy special. Maybe one of the most iconic ever. I really think if you picture Richard Pryor, you picture him in that red suit. And honestly, I think if you picture comedy specials, there might be two or three others, but Richard Pryor live on the Sunset Strip is probably the first that comes to mind. I know a lot of diehard Richard Pryor fans have said it's not even his best work necessarily, or their favorite work. So leave it in the comments, folks. Let me know in the comments. What's your favorite Richard Pryor album? What's your favorite Richard Pryor movie? Because it seems to be the go-to reference, at least, for the Richard Pryor's masterpiece. But I know a lot of people have differing opinions on that. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. And speaking of the comments and helping the show, if you'd be so kind as to subscribe to Blind Mike Project on YouTube, join the Patreon for bonus episodes every single month. We've been doing radio segments on there. So we started out with an Opie and Anthony, a more obscure Opie and Anthony segment. But the one we're recording tomorrow, if you're watching this on Patreon, and should be up this weekend, is the origin of Baba Booey. Where does the name Baba Booey come from? You'll find out on Patreon. So we've been doing segments like that as bonus Why You Laughings, as well as a bunch of others. We've covered Tucker Max, the Pelican Brief, Donald Glover's Weirdo, all sorts of stuff back there. So if you want to check out the Patreon, or just subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, like I said, all those links are at blindmike.net. So if you can go to blindmike.net, you can also find the Blind Mike Project there, as well as Who Are These Socials links. So how about the podcast? We got merch as well. So go to blindmike.net. That's where you can support the boys if you'd be so kind. But today, we're breaking down a special, as we do every so often. The more recent ones have been Delirious by Eddie Murphy, Killing Him Softly from Dave Chappelle, Brian Regan's I Walked on the Moon. But this would be the one. Like, I think if you were almost coming up with a stereotype of a comedy special, I really do feel like, am I overstating that, do you think, Craig? Like, this feels like the one I think of if you think of classic comedy specials.
For sure. And I know you listen to a lot of podcasts with comics on it. Almost every single one refers to this one at some point as being an inspiration to them.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, Pryor and Carlin are the go-to references for the top two comics ever. But I would say even Carlin doesn't have a special like this where you just picture it in your mind. You picture that red suit. And what's also interesting about it is this is after Richard Pryor set himself on fire. If you weren't aware, the man had a bit of a drug habit. He was a bit whacked out at times and ultimately set himself on fire, burned himself. And so, you know what it actually reminded me of in a way, because this was released in theaters. It was the biggest theatrical release of any comedy special ever, filmed at the Palladium in Hollywood. Which Live on the Sunset Strip is also a great name because it feels Hollywood, but not too Hollywood. It feels like relaxed Hollywood. So It gives it kind of a cool, it was the perfect feel for Richard Pryor, I think. But what it made me think of is, obviously not nearly as good a special, but when Chris Rock did his live special on Netflix this year, it was a similar, what I imagine was a similar vibe at that time, in the sense that you have this special, you have this amazing comic, and you're kind of sitting through his material, but there are a lot of people that are probably thinking, when's he going to talk about the Will Smith slap? You know, like when's he going to get to the thing we're all thinking about? Obviously, the Will Smith was more of a moment that we all watched. You know, unfortunately, none of us have footage of Richard Pryor setting himself on fire.
Right.
But I'm sure was an element at the time where people are sitting in the theater like, is he going to address that? And sure enough, he did, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's also a big thing to overcome in a comedy special too. When there's something in the back of people's minds I think that's something Chris Rock was fighting against, where people are like, "Is he going to talk about that?" That's any distraction from what you're talking about in the moment. I think hinders the special, and for Pryor to be able to overcome that, I think was a big hurdle.
I actually have a question on the Chris Rock aspect, and I guess this Pryor one as well. Do you think it would have been smart to open with that? Get it out of the way.
Interesting. Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually not a terrible idea. Now, what I would say about Chris Rock is the strongest stuff in the special by far was the Will Smith chunk.
Right, but I think he was nervous about getting to that chunk.
He definitely was. So I think Chris Rock is a different. You might have a better point with Chris Rock. With Richard Pryor, I actually, I mentioned that similarity to Chris Rock. But if you go back and watch the special, it was on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it still is. But if you go back and watch the special, what it truly reminded me more of was we've broken down both of Eddie Murphy's specials, Delirious and Raw, and you can tell Eddie has a similar style and probably was influenced by Pryor in that way in building his special, where it seems kind of rapid fire at the beginning and he hits you with a lot of jokes and then he kind of settles in and starts, bringing you through stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Pryor set it up well, whereas Chris Rock's was sort of a mess because it was a lot of the stuff at the top was unoriginal and stuff that's been covered to death over the last decade.
Right.
So it's tough to compare the two, but I think it's a much better point for Chris Rock's special. Pryor's no, because I think it did nicely build to where we'll end up here. But.
Yeah, it was also more scandalous, I think.
For sure, yeah. While this was a big deal at the time, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't, the Will Smith slap was like the Super Bowl. Everybody watched it.
Right.
Or that wasn't the case. This was just an interesting story and kind of a sad story. But
right.
All right, where are we starting? Live on the Sunset Strip.
Starting with fucking.
Very good. This is, again, we're talking influence. Go back and watch the Red Fox episode. Tell me if there's no influence here. It sounds like Red Fox speaking, for God's sake.
I was going to talk about something that's very serious, and I hope no one gets offended. I want to talk about fucking. And sometimes I talk about it, and a lot of people in the audience don't know what I mean. So would you raise your hand if you don't know what fucking is? So we can watch your ass when you leave here. There's not enough fucking going on in America. Americans, Reagan get in, you stop fucking. We fuck when Carter was in, we fucked all the time. There wasn't nothing else to do. Hey, let's fuck. President making a speech, let's fuck. Reagan in now, everybody listen to this motherfucker. We can't fuck now. I say get them last few fucks in now.
Yeah, that was, we played a bit from Red Fox where he's like, you can call it intercourse, but if you're doing it right, you fucking. And it's very similar to that bit. So we talked a lot about with Red, where the trajectory was clearly Red Fox to Richard Pryor to Eddie Murphy. And I think you hear it a lot in that bit. That was a very Red Fox inspired bit. And also ballsy, that's the open, he fired off one quick joke right before that. But that's basically the opener to this thing that's premiering in theaters around the country. So I think Pryor kind of wanted to set the tempo correctly to be like, this is what you guys are getting. So if you're going to leave the theater, get up and get out now, because this is what it is.
I also found watching this, the way he shoots the audience is in a way I've never actually seen before in a stand-up special or since.
So?
They are on handheld cameras getting up in their faces, and they're almost like they're mic'd. It's very, very strange.
Oh, interesting. I just saw a post on Reddit, like one of the stand-up Reddits, where they're like, they actually asked, what's the special with the best reaction shots? And I don't have an answer for that. I'm blind. I've never appreciated it, but that is interesting. It's something I've never considered, but obviously Richard took it into account. It seems like
it's definitely the most focused on I've seen.
Interesting.
Yeah. But next he goes from fucking to being all by himself masturbating.
And don't forget, these are edgier time for this to be talked about on a special like this and in theater, such a mainstream event, that was a lot different. And you kind of forget Red Fox obviously did it before Pryor, and Lenny Bruce and Red Fox and these guys set the table for this. But this still was an edgy thing to be talking about fucking and jerking off right at the start of your special in the 80s.
I discovered masturbating by accident. I'm not lying. I was about 10. I was in the tub. And that's when you used to have to hold your dick with 2 fingers. I mean, you remember when you was little like that? Right, I was in the tub and I said, hey. I'm on to something here. I bet Dad don't know about this. And then when you was young, remember men, right? We didn't come or nothing. You just made that funny feeling, yeah. Who are you? First time I came, ejaculated, scared the fuck out of me, man. I thought something was wrong. Right? I was with this woman and said, look at the fuck you done there. About an hour later, though, I was back. Can you do it again?
That was just a perfect example of the audience shot right there at the end, actually.
And, I still have the Chris Rock thing in mind. And I think where Pryor was smarter with this is he made the beginning of his special a lot more personal, in the sense that, I think Chris Rock tackled, like I said, a lot of topics that have been discussed ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is, maybe the idea of jerking off was covered a lot, but he made it like a personal feel. Immediately, you're now relating to Richard rather than trying to, grasp onto some social issue or something.
Next, we have him talking about Playboy Bunny.
Okay, let's hear it.
I got some Playboy Bunny pussy. I thought I was in the big time. Going home with a Playboy Bunny. You dig? We was gonna have a nice little midnight snack. I went to her apartment and one apartment was bad. It was one of them apartments that if I don't get the pussy, I can fuck this couch. And we started talking, and she had seen my act. She said, oh, I really like the way you do those little kids in your act. That's great. Can you talk like a little kid? He said, what, now? Yeah, just do a little. I feel fun out of me. Like, okay, you mean like when I do this? Like that? She said, yeah. I said, you like that, huh? And she started taking off clothes. And the more clothes she took off, the younger I got. When she got to her panties, I was on the floor talking about, mama. I love the papa. She gave birth to me about 9:30.
That's such a funny tag.
I know.
Birth to me. But that's what the greats that stayed great, past the point of getting famous. I think that's what they're best at, is talking about their lives now being famous, a thing, us at home can't relate to at all. The idea of me fucking a Playboy model and her wanting to do my act is something I certainly can't relate to. Yet he does it in a way where you absolutely get what he's talking about.
Right.
You get basically what he's saying is she's putting me in an awkward position, but because she's gorgeous, I'm just going to do it,
That clip there too, I just realized how much his cadence is just like Cosby.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I think we'll get a little more into it later, but I think there's definite frustration with Richard, because I think it's not dissimilar from how we were talking about Family Guy and South Park, where I think a lot of people would compare Richard and Cosby, and I think Pryor looked at it and said, like, what I'm doing is so much different than him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There are absolutely similarities, but I think people, what's interesting about it is people would actually compare them the opposite way, where I think there were a lot of people that liked what Cosby was doing and didn't like Richard's twist on it. But it's funny you say that too, because I guess at the beginning of his career, I should go back and try see if I can find any of this. But they say that the lore is that Richard was essentially doing Cosby when he started. Like he would dress like him, he would talk like him, and he shook a lot of that off. But as you noticed, there's still some of that on there.
I mean, what's coming out of his face is completely different. The way it's coming out sounds like if Cosby were dirty, it would sound just like that.
Yeah.
Next, real moment.
Okay, let's hear about this.
Can I get some water? There was supposed to be a stool and some water or something. Is it April Fool? Oh, this is the one. Well, I had to walk way the fuck over there to get some. Thank you, brother. Don't trip. You're nervous than me. Shit. I wish I'd had a picture of that shit. Thank you. Huh? Water. As far as I know. I hope I don't start tripping.
That to me reminded me of the Patrice confidence that we talk about, where like he's not nervous. It's the opposite of Chris Rock at the live special. He doesn't really seem to give a fuck. I'm sure he does inside, of course, but he's just hanging back and he's like, hey, where's my water? And he's fucking around with the crowd, and that seems so confident to me. Like, this is a massive thing. This is going to be shown in theaters. And he's just like, hey, where's my water?
I think the live aspect of Rock also impacted him.
For sure.
If that wasn't there, it would have been another day at the office, I think, for him.
Yeah, definitely. But still, I think there is an element of like, I think there are a lot of guys that would be like, this is my special. I can't be fucking around with the water and the stool on the stage and all that stuff.
Right.
I have to be laser focused. Whereas Richard, and I think that perfectly goes to his personality, where he's just playing it much cooler.
For sure. The coolest. Next is making money.
Okay, this is kind of what I was talking about before, I think, where a lot of guys struggle with this. I think once they get famous, they don't know how to relate to their audience. And this is definitely stereotyping or generalizing. I think for the most part, like black comedians do a better job at relating to their audience because they don't seem to they'll talk about having money in a way that we can relate to rather than pretending they don't have it. And I think that's what Richard does very well here.
No, but I do a lot of shit now that I never did when I didn't have money. I didn't have the problems that I have now, like watching motherfuckers count it. I must drive my accountant crazy because I wake up at 3 in the morning and go, hey, man, what the fuck? How much is it?
Well, prove it. Bring it over.
But it's 3 in the morning. Fuck that. I want to see it now.
But that's so perfect because that's not this unrelatable thing. That's what we all know would happen if we made Richard Pryor level money.
Right.
So he, again, is able to, I don't think he ever really lost touch with his audience. And it's something that frustrates me with Chappelle when he wears the C on his coat and he calls himself the GOAT. And I saw recently, like, the promo code for one of his tour dates was legend.
Oh.
And it's stuff like that where it's like, dude, you're the greatest ever. Stop reminding us. Let us say that. We know it, and we're the ones to talk about it.
That's disgusting.
It was a rough one to see.
Oh.
But Pryor strikes me as a guy, and I don't, on a personal level, I don't know if he ever changed, but it seems like he always remained in touch with his audience, at least up till this point.
Yeah. Next, we got him talking about fighting with his wife.
Okay, let's see. And this seemed to be a thing because he talks about kind of getting sober through all this. It seems like getting married kind of helped him.
How can women be so cool though when you angry? Don't you tell me I love you, don't you see? Yes, dear, I'm going for a walk. A walk? I want to fight. One night I left the house about 137 times. I just said, fuck you. And then I'd have to come back like, you forget your keys. You ever leave and forget your keys? Bitch, yeah, motherfucker. Yeah, bleed that shit. Yeah. You'll see. Oh, shit. Then you got to go back in the house.
That's been redone in a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah.
Where like the idea, but like Richard's able to make it very funny, and I think he was kind of one of the first to observe that type of shit. Where it's like there's nothing more frustrating than like having to come back in sheepishly.
Right.
I forgot my keys. I'm sorry. Now I'm out of here.
I mean it this time. Next we talk about prison.
Okay, and this is what I'm talking about, where Richard does a tremendous job of melding like bigger issues and just mundane stuff like fighting with your wife, and the idea of the prison system, like fusing those together, as well as drug addiction and race, like the gamut that he runs. And it reminds me a lot. The influence is obvious, but it reminds me of a lot of when we went through Eddie Murphy's specials, where it's like he's able to combine all of these. Like I just watched Mark Norman's special recently, and I think he's on a totally different level. He's not a similar comedian to Richard Pryor at all, but I do think he's very good at throwing in jokes about just relationship and his marriage or dating, sex, whatever, but then also talking about trans people and racial issues and big things like that. And that's what Pryor does a lot throughout this special, and kind of seamlessly goes in and out of them.
I went to penitentiary. Gene Wilder, I did a movie. I went to, not me personally. I mean, I went to do a film in penitentiary. And I was up there 6 weeks, Arizona State Penitentiary. It was something. Oh, you're applauding for that? Arizona State Penitentiary, real popular. Oh, man, it was strange because it's like 80% black people. And what's strange about that is that there are no black people in Arizona. I'm not lying. They bust motherfuckers in. And I was up there and I looked at all the brothers and it made my heart ache. It's all these beautiful black men in the joint. Goddamn, warriors should be out there helping the masses. And I felt that way. I was real naive, right? In 6 weeks I was up there. I talked to the brothers, and I talked to them. Thank God we got penitentiaries. I asked them, I said, why did you kill everybody in the house? Because they was home.
I think, and maybe it's the time we live in now. Maybe I would have a different take if I was watching this in 1982. But I think it's such a funny angle to take, because now we talk about how it's completely disproportionate. We talk about all these statistics with race and prisons and things like that. So I think it's such a funny such a funny stance for a black comedian to take. Like, yeah, some of these motherfuckers belong in prison. They were scary. Jesus Christ.
They were frightening. But he further talks here about prison violence.
Okay.
I thought black people killed people by accident. No, these motherfuckers was murderers. I met one brother, his name was J-Bo. Motherfucker lift weights, he was in charge of it. J-Bo, muscles every motherfucker. Where's my man? Muscle. He was doing a sentence, triple life. How in the fuck do you do triple life? I mean, if he die and come back, he got to go to penitentiary. Right? They say, fuck kindergarten, get your little ass back in the penitentiary, motherfucker. You know what you did last time you was here. Gene Wilder loved to jump in the middle of the killers and start talking, hi guys, how you doing? I said, Gene, bring your ass on. What do you think they do to us if we were here, Rich? You say, fuck us. And Jesus, I'm not homosexual. Homosexual ain't got nothing to do with it. They don't fuck you because you like it. They just fuck you just to see that look on your face.
I love the idea that Gene Wilder thought he'd be taken out on a date. Like, oh no, that's not my cup of tea. They'll understand that, of course.
Take it easy, Willy Wonka.
I think that's such a unique perspective because like all day we could talk about the prison system, whatever, and Richard's like, oh no, I went in and talked to some of these people, and this was my experience. I think it's such a great bit, and it's also the one thing that I found in there is like sometimes the best punchline. This is where I think clean comedians get it wrong sometimes, because I think overall, and I've said this before, that just this isn't a commentary on how funny it is or what style of comedy you should do or anything, but if you're just talking about clean comedy versus dirty comedy, I do believe clean comedy is more difficult because you're putting restrictions on it.
Correct.
You're putting any sort of boundaries you put on it does make it inherently more difficult. Yeah. But I think what clean comedians lose sight of sometimes is it doesn't always meet like I've heard I'm trying to think Bergazzi maybe say that like having to find a punchline that isn't dirty often makes it funnier. But there are also times where simply saying when Gene Wilder says, "What's the worst they could do to us?" and Richard just says, "Fuck us." That's sometimes the funniest option.
Yeah. And I know like Bergazzi, he talks like that anyway, so it's not so much of a.
And that's the main thing, and he says that all the time. The main thing is,
I was gonna say, I know like Regan and Gaffigan kind of are more blue off screen, you know.
Regan for sure, from what I hear,
yeah.
But Nate says the main thing is you want to talk how you really talk. So Bergazzi, to his credit, is not a guy that looks at, you know, Jim Jeffries and is like, you should be a clean comedian. That's what you should think about doing, you know?
Yeah. Next we got him talking about growing up.
Okay. This is what I'm saying. He weaves in and out of these kind of bigger topics to more basic stuff.
I used to be a thief, and I wasn't very good. I always got caught, and I would steal from neighbors. I wouldn't take no chances on getting caught too far from home. I'd go over to the neighbor's house, wipe them motherfuckers out. I paid them all back. Now I try to go back to Pier. I'm ashamed of myself. Go, Miss Johnson, I'm sorry I busted in your house. I knew it was you, boy. I don't know why I would steal. I remember my grandfather was in business. My family was in business. My grandmother owned like 3 or 4 brothels, and my grandfather had a pool hall, right? Called Pop's Pool Room. My uncle had a pool room, so there was money in the family. I was a lucky black child, right? Because I never went through no hard times about shit. It was hard. If you wasn't poor, you couldn't get no pussy. Say, we fucked just to keep our minds off of eating.
That's so interesting too, because I have always heard. I'll have to look more into this whenever we do a full Richard Pryor, like the life of Richard Pryor episode.
Yeah.
But I've always heard that he was raised in a brothel or something like that. I knew the tie to the brothel. It was interesting to hear him say, like, we did pretty well. My grandmother owned 4 of those fuckers. Like that, I had never heard that angle on. And it's, again, interesting for a guy like that to kind of spin it like, yeah, we live pretty well. And, you know, I think his perspective as a black kid growing up in the 80s, there is a different level of like, if you're middle class, like it's doing pretty good based on, you know, who you grew up with maybe. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah. Wasn't his mom like a prostitute or something?
That's what I thought. That's why I was a little confused by that. So I'll have to look more into it when we do the full history of Richard Pryor. I wanted to do this because I figured we haven't done a special in a little bit, but I do at some point want to do the full Richard Pryor. We'll do a Carlin episode. I'm kind of waiting for like milestone type of episodes for those guys. I don't know why, just mentally, that's what I decided to do. But at a certain point, I realized we're almost 100 episodes in, and we haven't discussed Pryor or Carlin, so we had to do this one.
we had to save those for like a what the fuck do we do next?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Rainy day.
Yeah. Here we have. I'm talking about racism.
Okay.
Racism is a bitch. I mean, white people, you gotta know, it fucks you up, but what it does to black people is a bitch. Because no matter what, it's hard enough being a human being. It's really fucking hard enough just to be that. Right? Just to go through everyday life without murdering a motherfucker. It's hard enough just to walk through life decent as a person. But here's another element added to it when you're black. Your mother's got that little edge on us. Is enough to make you crazy. Is if you're in an argument with another man, he may be white, but it's man on man for a minute, and the shit get rough, he end up calling you, nigga. You gotta go, oh, shit. Fuck. Now I ain't no man no more, I'm nigga. Now I got to argue with that shit. Fuck, throw my balance all off now. No, but it's an ugly thing. I hope someday they give it up because it won't work.
That is such an interesting perspective because you also have to remember, like, try and put yourself in a place where this is like 15 years after segregation, where legitimately black people weren't allowed in the same rooms as white people. So to tackle it from an angle of not anger, but like, hey, it's hard enough to be a human being, have some compassion for me, also having to deal with being black. I think that's such an interesting angle and a smart way to appeal to an audience that does probably still have plenty of racists in it, you know, especially by 2023 standards. There are definitely a lot of people that are like, you know, I don't like black people, but that Richard Pryor, that's a lot of the people he's talking to. So I think the tackle in that way is smart and also insightful, I think.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Yeah, for sure.
Next, we have him talking about Africa.
I mean, this is even more insight because he went to Africa. Unlike Chappelle, I don't think there were any rumors of him losing his mind and going there. I think he just went, which is probably nice for him. But this was his experience.
Man, you go, I went to the mother, I was gonna find my roots, right? 700 million black people. Not one of them motherfuckers knew me. I looked in every phone book in Africa. I didn't find one goddamn Pryor. I saw one familiar name, J-Bo Walker. I called that up. They say he's in Arizona.
Good callback.
But it's nothing like going and seeing nothing but black people. I mean, from the wino to the president, it's black people, and it's like fair. You know what I mean? You go someplace on liberated land. I said, these motherfuckers kicked ass and got their country. And I'm on the land, and it's black people. I mean, black, original black. You understand? Black. I mean, so many black people made me realize somebody in my family been lying to me. And it's nice as you land at the airport, you look out the window, see the black people, say, oh, wow, people are the same. The people in Africa fuck over your luggage just like the people in New York.
Again, and obviously it makes it funny at the end, but again, I think that's such a unique fucking perspective to talk in a way where it's like I went from the minority in this country to the vast majority in another and talk about that perspective. I think that's such a unique angle. Like there are a lot of different ways you could go on visiting Africa. And I think he has such a unique twist on it. Like even now, 40 years later, I had never thought of that. What it would be like for an American black person to visit Africa where you're now in the majority, like people look like you. And that's very normal. Whereas you're used to living in most likely a community of all white people. That's such a unique thing that even now I don't even think of. Like I said, 40 years later.
Right. And also comics. Do you see what he did? He did a callback in like the first quarter of the special. Do not close with them because they're not that funny.
That's right. I've seen a few. Even I've seen guys I like Sam Morrill ended on a callback of I think one of his best specials. But it's like it's not that strong, you know. That I think especially now, the thing about callbacks is like the magic trick is lost a little bit because comedy fans have consumed so much comedy that I think, you know, when that callback with Richard Pryor for some people would be like, what? How the fuck did he do that? I forgot about Arizona.
Well, even them, this is like one of the funniest guys that's ever done this,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, haha.
Yeah, he just threw it in the middle.
Yeah,
That's good.
He gets it. Next we have him talking about the N-word.
Okay.
One thing I got out of it was magic I'd like to share with you. You know, it's like I was leaving and I was sitting in the hotel and a voice said to me, said, look around, what do you see? And I said, I see all colors of people doing everything, you know? And the voice said, do you see any niggas? I said, no. I said, you know why? Because there aren't any. And it hit me like a shot, man. I started crying and shit. I was sitting there, I said, yeah, I've been here 3 weeks. I haven't even said it. I haven't even thought it. And it made me say, oh my God, I've been wrong. I've been wrong. I got to regroup my shit. I mean, I said, I ain't gonna never call another black man a nigga. You know, because we never was no niggas. That's a word that's used to describe our own wretchedness. And we perpetuate it now because it's dead. That word's dead. We men and women, we come from the first people on the earth. You know, the first people on the earth were black people. Because anthropologists, white anthropologists, so the white people go, that could be true, you know.
That I think is such an interesting moment because it's pretty much the one like serious part of the special where he's not, you know, there's not a lot of jokes peppered in. He's just making a real point. And it's interesting because it's almost the reverse of the Chris Rock black people versus N-words bit where he's saying, oh no, I'm not going to call anyone that. And that's what Chris Rock ultimately got a lot of shit for, and why he stopped doing the bit because he realized that racists were just like quoting his bit and saying like, oh, well, Chris Rock said this said it's okay to call these people that. Whereas Richard Pryor, you know, 15 years earlier is observing like, oh, no, that's a fucked up thing to call anyone. And it was interesting. It's again, he's got such an interesting perspective that led to a lot of the takes on this stuff that came after. And to almost a point where you don't even notice unless you're doing something like this, where you have to like dive in and, you know, figure out who it influenced. Then you kind of realize like, oh, these things that Pryor was saying, like Chris Rock and Eddie Murphy and all these people were listening to when they were younger and took a lot of this from him. Not in a way of like stealing, but like we're influenced by it.
I can see why people give Chris Rock shit because he's having a beautiful moment realizing, hey, here they don't even basically know that word exists. I know they probably do, but they don't say it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not something that's thrown at you when you act a certain way or when you do something. It just it's non-existent, and he wasn't even using it to that point. So it's a really insightful kind of thing he stumbled on.
Next we got him talking about the mafia.
Again, a similarity to Eddie Murphy's specials, where Pryor was very early. Now we can goof on the Dagos day and night. These greasy wops. It's all well and good. In the 80s, I don't know how much before. You know, this is long before The Sopranos and Jersey Shore and even like Goodfellas, where they almost became caricatures of Italians. Pryor and Eddie Murphy observed that pretty early on. And this is him talking about he had to deal with the mafia at one point when he was younger.
And these motherfuckers start telling murder stories. Hey, you remember when Guzzi? Hey, remember when I made my fucking bones? Me, I had to go away. It was Cleveland, right? Fucking Teamster. Big mouth, hurt a lot of people, right? You know, ice picks my thing, Rich. So we fucking had to drive down, me, Johnny Salami, the Gabuzzo brothers. They own the funeral parlor. You carry, we bury. Come here, you fucking kid. So we take this jerk off out bowling, you know, drive him around, get him a few drinks. Say, hey, let's get some broads, right? Little motel we had set up. Remember the Johnny? So we take him around. He gets kind of stoned, drops his glass. I say, now,
I pop him with the fucking ice pick, right? I'm popping this cocksucker, blood squirting every which way. I'm stabbing. Oh God, don't kill me. Oh fuck you, you guinea cocksucker. And the fucking ice pick breaks. I'm standing there with a fucking piece of wood in my hand. I said, Johnny Salami, what do I do? Johnny says, wait till it melts, asshole. Those were the good old days. What's the matter, Rich? You don't look so good. Hey, Salo, give me a little Sinini Pro. You got a way home? You want us to give you a ride?
Like I said, it reminded me of Eddie Murphy. It also reminded me a lot of some of the stuff that Burr does, where he's having conversations with someone that isn't there.
Yeah.
And I'm my favorite ever. And that, like, you don't look so good, Rich. That reminded me of maybe my favorite delivery of any joke of all time, because it's very subtle. When Burr is talking about the guy that owns the helicopter, he would take people out on helicopter rides.
Yep.
And
great
bit.
And
the guy kills himself. And there's a delivery where this tour guide's, he's got the guy in the passenger seat. He's giving the tour. He's talking about Los Angeles, and he's like, if you look over to the left here, put your seatbelt back on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that reminds. And Burr's one who's great at that. Like, having a catch with his fictional son and stuff like that. And that's what that bit reminded me a lot of. Is I just don't want to name black guys that Pryor influenced, I guess is what I'm saying. There's a little Burr in there too.
Put your seatbelt back on. Yeah, even in that same bit when he's pretending he's bobbing in the ocean, it's all very funny. Next we have a Mudbone.
This is a Pryor character that was super popular, and people would call out for it and everything. And when they did, Pryor brilliantly is able to transition into what some people were here for, the real story. So this is a little bit of Mudbone for the last time, he says.
What? Do what? All right, this is the last time Mudbone will be seen anywhere. This is Mudbone's last show, right? This is Mudbone. And ladies and gentlemen, from Tupelo, Mississippi, Mudbone. Now, I know that boy. See, he fucked up. See, that fire got on his ass. And it fucked him up upstairs. Fried up what little brains he had. Because I remember the motherfucker, he could make a motherfucker laugh at a funeral on Sunday, Christmas Day. But you know what happened? He got some money. That's what happened to him. He got some money. Simpson shit was gone. He said, fuck it. Went all the way crazy.
Now, Pryor goes on to do Mudbone for like 10 minutes, which I couldn't wrap my mind around how that unfolded. Like, was he going to do Mudbone anyways? Because you hear there, people in the audience are yelling, do Mudbone. So did he know that was going to happen? Was he going to do Mudbone whether they yelled it or not, and it just happened to be at the perfect time? It's crazy to me because someone just yells, hey, do Mudbone. And he's like, all right, fine, almost reluctantly. I'm going to do this character for the last time, and then turns it into Mudbone criticizing Richard Pryor for setting himself on fire. Genius. Utterly genius.
Yeah, I mean, some people just know the audience, like Patrice with the Natalie Holloway thing.
Yeah.
No one would know that name. He knew they were gonna it's like Chappelle knowing someone's gonna yell Rick James at him.
Right. But yeah, that's what it was so perfectly timed because he does Mudbone for 10 minutes and then goes right into talking about the story of him setting himself on fire. So yeah, he does Mudbone for the last time. He was sick of doing it, I guess, which is understandable. But it is, I mean, you can tell from that. Basically, the character is just like a drunk Mississippi pseudo philosopher of sorts, like just kind of a neighborhood guy that pontificates. And in this case, he was talking about Richard Pryor setting himself ablaze, and it was pretty funny.
And here's him talking about burning up.
Yes, it segued nicely into his closing topic.
Sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden he says something about, when you signify, motherfucker get vicious, say, well, what about them burn up rings around your neck, motherfucker? And it hit me because I had never thought of myself like that, because I said, yeah, I've been burned up. No, it never had hit me like it hit him. I said, yeah, I've been burnt the fuck up. Because most people I meet, I act like I ain't burned up. They do too. Motherfucker, sneak a peek. Be dumb. A nice tattoo you have. All over your body. I guess y'all say, fuck all that. How'd you burn up?
It's dawning on me now, listening to this, that a better comparison, we were talking about Chris Rock, actually a better comparison, if you're just going for how the special turned out, would be Louis C.K. Sincerely. His first special back after his scandal. Obviously a lot different type of story, but Louis just does his material, the material we're all used to seeing, the same way Pryor did for a lot of the special. And then at a certain point kind of mentions something, and the crowd's like, is he going to talk about it? And he's like, all right, let's get into it. And that's what this was, where you're kind of watching like, is he going to mention that he was doing crack and set himself on fire? And then you're like, oh, okay, here it comes.
Is him saying what happened.
Yeah, so what's amazing to me too, listening to this, is like, I always think of Artie Lang now. When you listen to Artie now, and it took a while to get there, he lasted a hell of a lot longer than a lot of people thought he could. But like when you listen to Artie and anything he's done recently, he's gone. The guy that we all knew, his soul seems to be gone. Like drugs did enough damage to where he's not the same guy. He doesn't have that same energy that he used to have. Pryor struggled a lot later in his life. Like he had a lot. I think he was in a wheelchair when he died and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But here, like you listen to the things that Pryor went through with drugs and just physically, literally being a burn victim, and he's still all there, hasn't lost a fucking step, and that's what I find very inspiring, frankly. But this is him talking about what happened.
I know y'all done heard all kind of stories about how I burn up bass and this and ether that, and none of that shit got nothing to do. That's not true. I'm gonna tell y'all the truth tonight. Okay? You gotta promise not to tell nobody. Can I trust you? You some lying motherfuckers. All right, now all my friends know this to be true because everybody knows me. Like usually before I go to bed, I have milk and cookies. And one night I had some low-fat milk and some pasteurized, and I mixed them together, and I dipped my cookie in, and the shit blew up.
People like applaud that. Yes, you filthy drug addict. Yeah, I may have jumped the gun. I have to admit that wasn't the actual story of what happened. So I think he gets a little more in depth here.
A lot of people say shit. I think about shit. I say, why do people think? Now listen to me. All the people you ever heard of freebasing, have you ever heard of anybody blowing up? Why free. 10 million motherfuckers free base. I gotta blow up.
That's such a funny, real angle to take because I imagine it's what anyone in that type of position would think. And what you say once you've had time to, fully recover and everything, what you're supposed to say is, I've learned a lot from that, and it really showed me the path I was going down and this and that. But Richard's just blatantly honest, and he's like, "What? So many people do this shit. Why would I set myself on fire? What the fuck?"
It had to be me.
Such an honest moment.
Yeah. This is him continuing talking about addiction.
Okay.
And then the pipe starts saying shit like, "You let me get a little low yesterday. I don't like that. Now don't let me get low again or I'm gonna hurt you. You promise keep me full at all times, okay? Come on, Rich, you can do it. Because I understand." And finally, dope dealers, I did it so bad, dope dealers tried not to sell me nothing. Now that's doing it. Well, dope dealers say, "Man, I ain't gonna give you no more of that shit. I'm sorry, brother. I can't see you do it to yourself." Now, dope dealers don't give a fuck about nothing usually. People think these motherfuckers refuse to sell me cocaine. Say, "No, motherfucker, you killing yourself." What? Man, I don't want to see you fuck yourself up. I ain't never heard of dope dealers doing that. I mean, you could sooner get free food in a Chinese restaurant.
Mulaney actually has a great story in his special Baby J that came out earlier this year, where he tells this story about this guy. Like, you have to break up with your drug dealer when you get out of rehab. And he texted this guy and basically said, like, "I'm losing your number, blah, blah, blah." And I forget exactly how the joke goes, but essentially the guy says to him, like, "You were the only person I sold drugs." And John was like, "Well, how did this relationship come to be?" And the guy was like, "I don't know. You just kept texting me, hounding me for drugs. And I didn't want you to get like bad stuff. So I went out and bought drugs for you." And it's this wild story. And that's what I loved about Mulaney's special, where he kind of kept it. He would tell real things about his life, but keep it very funny. And that's what I appreciated about Pryor's story here, where he's talking about this serious drug addiction that he had, obviously, that resulted in him almost dying. And yet he's able to make it into this kind of silly bit where the crack pipe and Jim Brown, he gets into Jim Brown, like trying to help him get sober. And the crack pipe and Jim Brown are basically the angel and devil on each of his respective shoulders.
Next, we have him talking about being on fire.
Okay. Yeah, this is, talk about unique experiences. I don't know how many other comics have talked about this specifically.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. When that fire hits your ass, that will sober your ass up quick. I mean, I was standing there on fire and some said, "Why, that's so pretty blue. You know what? That looks like fire!" I'm talking about fire is inspirational. They should use it in the Olympics. Because I did the 100-yard dash in 4.3. And you know something I found out? When you're on fire and running down the street, people will get out of your way. Except for one old drunk, right? He's going, "Hey, buddy, can I get a light?" How about just a little off the sleeve, whatever, okay? And you can tell when you fucked up, man. When you get to the hospital and the doctor go, "Ah!"
Yeah, that's one that no one can really pretend they had that experience. Even Carlos Mencia would know you can't change the punchline to hot tamale and take that one. That's a pretty unique Richard Pryor experience.
Yeah, that's gotta be the worst way to go, or worst thing to have happen.
Well, luckily he lived. This is not posthumous, this special, believe it or not.
Right.
But
Right.
but that's ultimately what all of this is about. Every comedy special we break down is taking moments like that from your life and turning it into funny. Like now, I think people would feel obligated to do like a one-man show on their recovery, where Pryor was such a funny fuck that he just turned it into his closer, basically, and was still able to make it a funny story.
Yeah. And this one is him saying he's grateful.
Okay.
Pain sure stops racism quick. What no color in there except burn up motherfuckers. Be talking about. And we all got religious. You find God quick when they find your ass dead. I was watching TV one night and they said I had died. I was bandaged up and shit. And they said, Richard Pryor died 5 minutes ago. Woo! 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 But I thank God every day, Jack. I do. I say, God, thank you for not burning my dick. Most people said, you've been punished by God. I say, no, if God wanted to punish my ass, he'd have burnt my dick. Now that's some punishment. Because when that fire hit my ass, my dick went to work. Emergency! Piss, come, do something! Keep the fire off the balls! And my chest was hollering help. The dick say, fuck you, don't burn yourself! Peck in the balls! Spit!
Again, another great tag where my chest was hollering help. to think of that, and also to go through that experience, and that's where you have to appreciate guys that were funny first. To go through that experience and ultimately turn it into a dick joke is truly what makes Richard Pryor a treasure in comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. But
and I do wonder if, to mention Louis again, if he kind of took influence from things. I'm not even saying specifically this special, but we talked about in the Louis C.K. episode where, you know, why did Louis go about, like, none of the podcasts he didn't talk about his, he never talked about the incident. He put out a formal apology when it first happened, and he's never addressed it again on any podcast or anything. Actually, on his own podcast that he did behind a paywall, he addressed it briefly. But that's really it. And people thought, why? And even I thought, like, why wouldn't he talk about it on Rogan, or why would he address it in his special in kind of a joking way, but never really get into it? And I think he kind of views it the way Richard viewed this incident, is like, I could have like a sob story moment or make a one-man show out of this or something serious, but I'm a comedian. I'm a court jester. I'm a clown. Right. I'm supposed to keep it funny. And so I wonder if Louis kind of dealt with some of that, where he's like, maybe I'll do it kind of the Pryor way, where I don't make it into a serious issue. I keep it fun. Now, obviously, drug addiction and what Louis went through are two totally different things, but I think there is a similarity in the gravity of the subject, I guess, I
mean, honestly, Louis having a giant sign that says sorry behind him is one of the funniest things he could have done.
It's brilliant. And for people not to understand why that's funny, it has been crazy to me for the last 2 years, but
so funny. But we're at our last clip, the closer.
And this is, I always try when we happen upon these topics to include things from our intro. We should use the Chappelle Pryor intro for this one, just because it makes the most sense, obviously, because this was an easy one. It is, we use a Pryor clip in the intro that is from the closer of this special. And so, Pryor goes to the entire story of, being a burn victim and all of that, and then says, hey, you people are here supporting me, but some of you had some shit to say also.
It's been a pleasure for me to do this and get up here, and thank you very much. I want to say y'all gave me a lot of love when I was not feeling well, and y'all really, I appreciate it. Also, y'all did some, applaud yourself. Also, y'all did some nasty ass jokes on my ass too. Oh yeah, y'all didn't think I saw some of these motherfuckers. Since you love me so much. I remember this one. Just strike the match like this. Say, what's that? Richard Pryor running down the street.
And that was it. That was the closer.
He just makes fun of himself.
That's so great because it's making fun of himself, but also kind of making fun of the audience and being like, hey, if you're weird listening to me make jokes about this, remember how many of you fucks made jokes when I wasn't in the room,
Right.
Again, funny first was Pryor's thing. And it's why ultimately I think I would put Pryor over Carlin as the greatest ever, because I don't think Carlin's ultimate goal was funny first, at least not at the end when he became more of a philosopher. And I think that's kind of happening with Chappelle, and it's why I say Louis over Chappelle. I've started to believe, and that's for my taste. I think there are also probably some people that say, well, Carlin and Chappelle, what they have done is more powerful to the world, and I think there's a point to be made there too. But if you're purely talking from a comedy standpoint, I think Pryor's main focus was always funny, and he never really strayed from that.
Yep, him, and that's why Louis is a perfect example, because he started going down, like Louis started going down the campaigning for Hillary.
He started putting on a suit and emailing people about Hillary, and he was wearing glasses.
But he never let it jeopardize his stand-up.
He didn't. And you really got to thank those ladies for coming out, because they saved him. They kept him funny,
They didn't backstab Murney.
So that's it. That's Richard Pryor live on the Sunset Strip. Like I said, we will eventually, of course, because he lived a very interesting life, do a full Richard Pryor episode.
Yes.
I've seen people say, like, hey, you should do, Rickles and Carlin and yeah, we're gonna. Don't worry. There's a lot of episodes to go of this show. So we will obviously get to all of the big names as well as some of the more obscure ones like Dat Fan, for example. So, we got a long way to go on the show. A lot of history to cover. That's right. I hope you guys support the show. I hope you're enjoying it. Leave some comments. Like I said, let's start debates in the comments section on YouTube, for God's sake. Tell me, is Pryor the greatest ever? Is it Carlin? Is it somebody else? What's Pryor's best work? Is it live on the Sunset Strip? Or is there something you like more? Oh, that's what I meant to mention this earlier. I always forget stuff. But what's most interesting about him saying he's not using the N-word anymore is he literally has an album that I want to buy. I have a record player and I want to buy this record, but literally I think I might be taken off of YouTube if I hung it behind me. there's a word in there that isn't allowed anymore. So that's what was interesting about him saying he's not going to say that anymore. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Support the show as you guys have been doing. I appreciate it. Bonus episodes on Patreon, or support the show for free wherever you get podcasts. blindmike.net is the place to do that. So visit blindmike.net if you'd be so kind. We do appreciate it. And if you want to support Craig and check out what he does, if you do, like, Richard Pryor isn't saying the N-word anymore, but a place that is, that's a very good show. Go to verygoodshow.org.
It's not accurate. That's a hoax.
Well, test if I'm wrong. See if I'm wrong. See if you can find evidence that sides with me. Go to verygoodshow.org. That's where you're going to check out Craig's program. Check out the free show. And then if you like him, support the boy on Patreon, for God's sake, will you? Yeah,
and we have Very Good Show, our Team Pryor over Carlin.
Wow, they do that to save face.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of these guys say, Like I said, there's always someone that says, hey, that Richard Pryor is one of the good ones. That's a Very Good Show. So,
I can't be racist. I'm a fan of Richard Pryor.
Yeah, right. All right, guys. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching. And feel free to suggest any topics you want covered in the future. And until next time, we'll talk to you later on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.